Hello, I'm Costin Boldea from University of Craiova, and I would like to present you a study together with my colleague from Timișoara about the negative effect, economic effect of recent energetic crisis on the real home value in few Mediterranean countries. Starting from our motivation started from the fact that in 2021, 2022, the fuel price first and the gas price risen sharply as a result of global tension in energy market. First, fueled by the recovery in world trade after the economic crisis caused by COVID epidemic, then by the conflict in Eastern Europe, in Ukraine. Similarly, price related to heating and home maintenance have increased significantly. Gas, electricity, wood, heating oil, etc. This increase in energy price lead to a general increase in consumer price for current product, affected the employment rate, affected also the house price index and other economic indicators. Our study focused only on the influence of energy inflation on the house price index, but we try to verify a certain correlation with GDP variation and unemployment in the studied country. As a case study, we chose three touristical countries bordering Mediterranean Sea. It's a case of Croatia and east north of Adriatic Sea, Greece and Turkey. All three countries affected by this energetic crisis and by a certain psychological effect on the price house, because being a touristical country, they know an afflux of foreign demand for holiday house, not only by local population. So our central purpose was to identify and quantify the connection between the house price index independent variable and energy inflation as principal dependent variable by proposing a nonlinear regression model of correlation. We additioned the GDP variation and unemployment rate in order to complete the model and to obtain a strong correlated model. The initial data was extracted from World Bank database, and our study covered the period from 1st January 2019 to end of October 2022. Our model of regression is a derived from a generalized linear model, but include two nonlinear terms, derived from first two expression of Fourier expansion of the energy inflation. This model was derived first from a model of Nazlioglu 6 years ago, proposed 6 years ago, 7 years ago. And it's one of the most sample model that include Fourier expansion terms. We tested more terms, but it's not necessary to introduce level 2, level 3 terms, Fourier expansion. The unknown coefficient, C1, C5, was computed using the sound facilities in ERCODE, the language program. As example, starting from Croatia, I present shortly for each country what we have obtained. Initial data for Croatia presented now on the screen. At first view, we constat in the beginning of 20 years, the beginning of the COVID epidemics, we have a start of unemployment rate rising in Croatia, a short but strong rise, a variation, negative variation first of energy inflation in Croatia, but starting with the second part of 2021, the energy inflation becomes volatile and very volatile, and variation, strong variation, positive and negative variation. The GDP variation have a large gap at the start of COVID pandemic, and rest variation of GDP is very small, but the house price index in Croatia have some very strange, long, large gap. How this gap can be modeled by our regression equation? First, I have an example on the screen that of the result of computation in R code. For non-specialists, it's very difficult to understand, but any line represents some estimation for one of the parameters of the model, C0, C5, and estimate error and the value of student test, t-test, with the probability expressed as subunitar number of non-relevance of this parameter. The model in this case becomes represented at the end of the bottom of the page. One observation: the GDP variation of Croatia have a very non-significant, non-relevant influence of this model. The most important term of the model, most important terms of the model are the non-linear in sinus and cosinus terms. So a linear model cannot be used for prediction in this case. The other observation is the F-statistic test, the Fisher test, is passed with a large value, and multiplier squared, its squared is more than 83%. So the model presents a strong connection between independent variable, that means house price index, and the other variables, the most significant, most relevant being the energy inflation. As prediction model, in blue is our predicted line, derived from regression equation. In red, it's original data for house price index in Croatia. The model have a correlation between initial value and predicted value very high, 91%. The difference are observable directly on some jump in the house price in Croatia. This jump in house price in Croatia are unnatural jump, are produced by a strong increase in some period of the year of price of holiday house after the intervention on the market of foreign investors. For the case of Greece, the analysis was similar. Our model is expressed at the bottom of the screen. The correlation between the predicted value and original data of house price index is more is higher, 97%. So this model in the case of Greece is our equation can be used in prediction with very, very large accuracy. And I do not play. In the paper, we presented the other statistical indicators. For example, S square here it's 84. Fisher test is passed without any problem. The indicator, the probability of null hypothesis, that means of irrelevance of the model is very, very low, very, very small. In the case of the difference, in the case of Greece, was the economy of Greece, it's from long time dominated by European economy, correlated with the European Union economy. So some instability factor that affect, for example, Croatia do not manifest in the case of Greece. Even in this case, the GDP variation have a small importance, small relevance in the case of model, in the construction of the model. For the case of Turkey, we expected to have strong variation between predicted model and real data, predicted data and real data. In the case of Turkey, the state that know a strong inflation in the last 2 years and a strong increase of house price index in the same period. The correlation between these two parameters are directly expressed by our regression equation. The GDP variation of in the case of Turkey have absolutely no importance in our model. Parameter is quasi-null. Coefficient expressing this influence of GDP variation for house price is quasi-null. Unemployment, by contrary, is significant. Unemployment is inverse correlated with house price. It's more important that our model is predicted with a probability of 98%. Taking into consideration the correlation of predicted value with initial data, this is the greatest prediction probabilities from the three models. We do not take into consideration in our construction eventual case of natural catastrophe like earthquake or other political instability factors. So even this model was valid until the end of 2022. We cannot use it, I think, for prediction in the next years without making some adjustment that include the different crises, other natural, other economic crises. So, at a short conclusion, we don't expect to obtain a so good regression model because precedent study from 2020, very good study of Yilmaz and Kestel on forecasting house price in Turkey that use three different approach. And include as dependent variable the exchange rate, for example, supplementary exchange rate, do not have the same R-square prediction parameter, do not have the same correlation between predicted data and initial data. Another model, more recent model in 2022 of Steenval and his collaborators practically introduced and verified the idea that nonlinear models are more important, more predictive, more accurate for prediction than generalized linear models in the initial phase. And for this reason, in our case, the nonlinear part in sinus and cosinus, the variational part, was essentially, at least for the case of regression model for Croatia and Greece. I wish to finalize here. Our model was incipient one, so we propose ourselves to develop and include more economical parameters to increase its capacity of prediction in the future. Thank you very much.